Howdy Saints! Today we explore the Glade Top Trail System, specifically the West Fork 509 in blue, the Tensin Hollow 507 in red, and the 149 Skyline Drive in light blue. From the Branson Landing, you will use Missouri 76 until you meet US 160. You're going to follow 160 until you hit Missouri 125, where you will head north to the trail entrance. First, I headed down West Fork 509 to the hub tree. The coordinates below show you the entrance point to West Fork, and these coordinates show you where we're going to the hub tree. At the Glade Top Trail sign, you'll make an immediate right to enter into the 509 trail. Your first obstacle will be this rock ledge that's roughly a foot to maybe possibly 30 inches at the center point tall. I've never really mentioned the specs of Lil Red Six, but she's on a 2-inch lift with 30.6-inch tires. So most of the routes that I take, or lines I should say that I take, are the easier, more forgiving ones in terms of these trails. The next couple sections are relatively easy with just minor ledges and drop-offs and mostly just coarse gravel, but they will flex your vehicle to their potential. Right here, Dad, I told him to go driver a little bit, and he thought go driver a lot. So he ended up taking advantage of the more flexible areas up here to the driver's side of the Jeep. So what I learned from this trail is that I need probably one more additional inch of lift in the front. I'm really considering getting the JKS adjustable coilover so I can balance the Jeep left to right and lift it to the exact amount I want. So if anybody has any suggestions or experience with those, leave me a comment and tell me how you like them. I think they would suit my Jeep really well, being limitedly lifted. As you can see, we definitely had our fair share of snow and ice on the trail, which made it a little extra fun, but the main obstacles were still the main obstacles, being these gigantic ruts, as well as water crossings and, just general mud underneath the ice. I guess it's a good time to just spill the beans on future plans with Lil Red Six, including using her name on YouTube. I've always referred to her as Lil Red Six or Cherokee Diablo, and I figured it's time to give you guys a common reference point of what I will call the Jeep. Also, I guess it's a good time to explain my goal with the Jeep, which has always been lift it as much as you need, but nothing more, and keep the tire size as small as possible, yet as effective as possible, both in terms of off-roading and MPGs. That way the Jeep can still make these long journeys away from home and be my daily driver, yet get the job done on the trails. Right here, I was kind of confused which way to actually go up here. There was a little bit of a trail to the left and a lot of trail to the right, and I wanted to make sure I stayed on the 509. And by going to Onyx, I accidentally ended the video. But here's a good picture of that creek crossing. Ultimately, that leads you to the bottoms where you start getting more on these dirt, muddy roads that lead to the actual West Fork Creek and the hub tree. On this part, we're gonna go from the hub tree back uphill on Tensin Hollow Road, which is the 507. Here's the hub tree's coordinates again, hub tree. And here's the Tensin Hollow entry point for the 507. After you head west-northwest from the hub tree, you'll come across this little rocky creek section, but that ultimately leads to more dirt roads like the former of the 509, but that quickly changes as you enter into the forest. Here where you enter back into the forest, you're following parallel to a little creek that feeds into the West Fork Creek at the bottoms, and you can definitely tell it has an effect on the trail in this area via the ruts and the water collection, such as the one right here, where my dad and I actually determined it was better to find a bypass around this after I was basically plowing straight into ice with the diff cover. Luckily for us, to the left there was a little bit of a bypass that somebody had made through the trees, and on the far side of the ice it was still solid enough that the Jeep could crawl over it without busting through. This spot right here is probably one of my favorite spots of the trail, just because of the drop in right here, going over some rock ledges with ice and snow in the mix. And then you go through this small creek crossing, followed by the second creek crossing, which was basically completely iced over the top, but underneath had running, trickling water. A very cool area and a very cool scenery. Right here, once I passed my dad, you can see that the tires on the passenger side just started spinning, and I let off the throttle right about the time that it gained traction, and luckily I didn't do anything to any of the drivetrain in that. I know potentially getting your wheels spinning very fast like that and then them suddenly jarring can do stuff, but then again, I don't have near the weight in my tires that other people do, that I feel is the main culprit of leading to snapped drivetrain components. Then you start climbing uphill through ruts and washed out spots. They are probably some of the hardest off-camber sections of the trail, definitely flexing your vehicle from point to point, from caddy corner wheels. Like this spot here, for an example, where you're climbing from one rut to the next and you're basically flexing tire completely into the fender well. I think this video and the corresponding following picture give you a good example of how pictures never show the true potential of actually crawling up these hills. Because here's the same spot and it looks like nothing. Looks like cakewalk, but in reality, you're flexing your vehicle and really kind of having to grunt your way up to the top. Next, you really start to climb up the grade going up the hill, and roots and rock start to play their mix in the role, including ledges. About the time that you start meeting the rock ledges and heavy rock sections, the trail starts to open up, having less trees surrounding you, and you more so are just out in the open crawling over these rock obstacles like such. This is definitely the most challenging section of the trail because you go over like 5 or 6 different rock ledges. On this next part, I accidentally put it in time lapse, but you can still get the idea of what this is all going through. I went ahead and slowed these down by half so you could really get an idea of what we went over to get here. This was probably where I flexed the Jeep the hardest off camber to one side. Then I got my camera fixed back to normal video play, and I captured the next section, which might have been one of the harder sections to climb over due to the nose end actually wanting to slide when I bumped up to it. If I had squared up on this ledge a little bit better, I might have not had trouble going over it the first time, but once the tires slid to where the center point was more so of hitting this ledge, I just had to back up and bump it to get it to go over it. And then by the time the rear tires went over it, I just bumped them as well with a little bit more acceleration, and they went right over it as well. And here's one last photo look at that obstacle. Doesn't look as daunting in picture as it really was in the Jeep. Next, you climb over the last couple rock ledges leading up to the top part of the hill with the overlooking valley shots. Definitely a good wrap up to this trail's challenging section of rock climbing and rock ledges. With the most challenging part behind us, we decided to get out and take some photos overlooking the valley down into the bottoms where the two trails meet the hub tree. You know, the best thing to do is to share these memories with somebody and definitely get some shots of yourself out on the trails, because a bunch of Jeep photos one day will mean nothing to anybody, but pictures of yourself will. The last little section features a little water collection spot, an easy hilltop gravel road, and the connection back to the 149. Last but not least is the Glade Top Trail, also known as Skyline Drive, Forest Service Route 149. We're going to start on the east end and work our way back to the west end via the camera roll. Here's Wolf Junction, which is at the eastern end of the 149. It includes the forestry signs and the street signs of the Glade Top Trail. This leads you up some rolling hills, which have some breathtaking views overlooking the valley below. At this point in the trail, you pass the 510, the 507, and lastly, the 59 at the Glade Top Trail sign. I want to thank you guys for watching. This concludes our video of the Glade Top Trail System, for now at least. Maybe there'll be a part 2 in the future. God bless and have a good one. Your friend, St. Chris. Later.